Hello, and welcome to another episode of the Science on the Edge podcast. I'm Dr. Mark Darcy, and in today's episode, we're going to delve into the world of hacking. So first, we'll talk a little bit about hacking, different techniques, different types of hacker, that kind of thing. And then we will move into social engineering, which is a kind of different way of getting into systems, but one that a lot of people do fall for. So let's just get started. So here we go. I think you'll enjoy this episode. Okay, so just bear with me one moment. Okay, so hacking and social engineering. Oh, by the way, if you want to follow me on Twitter, my Twitter handle is @MarkOfTheD. I'm a bit controversial on Twitter, but some people like that, some people don't. But either way, you don't have to follow me. But if you would like to, there's a lot of science and tech on there and a little bit of politics. Okay, so now hacking. So first, we're going to start with brute force attack. So brute force attacks, definition. So this is attempting to gain access by trying all possible combinations of passwords. It's very old school. The mechanism of this is basically you use automated software to generate and test multiple passwords to get into someone's email or other system. Targets of this sort of attack are user accounts with weak passwords and inadequate lockout policies. Luckily, these days, we tend to be a bit better at blocking multiple password attempts. Most software does at least, but not all. This does still sometimes work, especially if someone's password is very weak and easy to guess. A lot of people set up their first password, at least these days, when they're about 15 years old for their first email account, and they don't really change it. And it's probably something like Hello Kitty 123 or Man U Forever. Don't do that. Those sorts of passwords are easy to work out just by checking someone's social media and trying a few combinations. So the countermeasures always use strong, unique passwords coupled with multi-factor authentication, MFA, which organizations like Gmail now insist upon. By the way, they do insist upon that because in the past, they were attacked and they were hacked into. A lot of Gmail accounts were hacked into before multi-factor authentication was introduced. Same with a lot of other systems. Okay, so an example of this, an attacker uses a tool like John the Ripper to continually guess the password of a Windows user account until successful. Next, we have key logging. So this is capturing keystrokes to gain sensitive information such as passwords. So for example, everything you type on a keyboard gets recorded by some malware installed on your system. So malware or physical hardware that records keystrokes that can be added to your computer without your knowledge or to a network without the network administrator's knowledge and used to record keystrokes. So any Windows user who inputs sensitive information via keyboard is a target. Countermeasures, employing up-to-date antivirus software and being cautious of suspicious hardware and software. A lot of people are not cautious enough when they're at work or even at home with their IT. So an example, a user unknowingly downloads a malicious software that logs all their keystrokes. Click on a link you shouldn't, that kind of thing. Eventually, this captures their login credentials or even things like credit card numbers or that sort of thing. Next, we have phishing attacks. That's with a PH. This is using deceptive emails or messages to trick the user into revealing sensitive information. This is old school. You have won the Nigerian lottery. You have a parcel force delivery that was missed, and you need to log into parcel force account and basically give your credentials, pay a little bill to actually get a redelivery. Of course, the link in the email is not to the real parcel force, it's to some hacker site. So, mechanism often employs hyperlinks that redirect to fraudulent websites, a fake post office account website, for example. Targets, email accounts, banking credentials, and personal data. Countermeasures, vigilance with email attachments and links, double-checking website URLs, and employing email filters. So an example of this, an email masquerading as a Microsoft support message prompts the user to confirm their login details on a fake Windows login page that looks just like the real thing. Man in the middle attack, MITM. So this is intercepting and potentially altering communication between two parties. So mechanism commonly occurs on unsecured Wi-Fi networks. Targets, personal and financial data sent over the network. Basically, to get around this, to stop this from happening to you, always use HTTPS when possible, use VPNs, secure Wi-Fi, not some random Wi-Fi from a local cafe while you're on holiday. For example, you don't know how good the router or even the computer in the back room is. It could be very easy to hack. Always use systems with robust encryption. Don't just log into any random Wi-Fi. An example, an attacker sets up a rogue Wi-Fi hotspot and intercepts data from a Windows laptop connected to it, capturing login credentials passed over the network. Very easy to do. You just get a laptop, you turn it into a Wi-Fi point. So you sit in some shopping center somewhere. You call the Wi-Fi something like the cloud or Starbucks or Eduroam or something that people would normally log into. You make it open, let anybody log into it, and use software to scan all the details that go through your laptop. Many hackers do this. Drive-by downloads. So this is unauthorized download of software, often malicious when visiting a website. Mechanism. This exploits browser vulnerabilities or employs deceptive tactics to make the user download malware, malicious software. Targets are unpatched or outdated Windows systems and web browsers. By the way, I seem to be picking a lot on Windows here. There's a reason for that. Windows isn't very good. It really isn't when it comes to security and that kind of thing. Apple is way better. And by the way, I'm not just trying to get you to buy Apple. I use neither. I'm a Linux user, which I believe is the best of all three, the most secure. It's totally free to use. It's open source software. The security is good. And no one's really writing viruses for Linux anyway, because, well, there's such a small percentage of the population that use Linux. Anyway, that's for another talk. Okay, so countermeasures, regularly updating software and employing security settings that restrict automatic downloads. Example, a user visits a compromised website that automatically downloads a Trojan onto their Windows machine. Remote code execution, RCE. This is exploiting vulnerabilities to execute malicious code remotely. The mechanism targets known security holes in Windows OS or installed software. For example, when Windows 11 was shipped, it came with a little hole, little back door built into it that many people exploited. Targets systems with outdated or unpatched software. Countermeasures, regular patch management, firewalls, and up-to-date antivirus software. I should say, by the way, even with the most up-to-date antivirus software, your computer isn't protected. Back in 2014, the major antivirus companies admitted that they cannot guarantee protection of your system, even if the antivirus is the most up-to-date. And that's because new viruses are being created every minute of the day. There's no way any antivirus software can protect against them all. Example, an attacker exploits a vulnerability in an outdated version of Windows to execute a payload that gives them control over the system. This is one of the reasons, by the way, why if you do have some old laptops, some old XP machine, Windows 8 machine from a few years ago, don't connect it to the internet, because there will be holes in it. And because it's now abandoned software, those holes are not being fixed with security patches. So very easy to hack into. Social engineering attacks, which I will talk about in more detail later. So manipulating individuals into divulging confidential information. Mechanisms, pretext, phishing, and impersonation. Targets are anyone who can be deceived into giving away access credentials or personal data. Basically, to counter this in business, staff education is necessary on the risks and signs of social engineering. Stringent verification processes are needed to block it. I will give examples, many examples as we go along. One, though, an attacker calls a company's help desk, pretending to be a senior executive in urgent need of a password reset, thus gaining unauthorized access. So now spear phishing. This is a refined form of phishing targeted at specific individuals or organizations. Mechanism: custom crafted emails that appear to come from trusted sources to deceive the recipient. The targets are executives, administrative staff, or specific departments within an organization. Countermeasures: employee training to recognize phishing attempts, multi-factor authentication, and email verification techniques. Example: an attacker researches a company executive, then sends a convincing email, supposedly from the senior financial officer, asking for an urgent wire transfer, transfer of funds. If you get enough information, you sound plausible, you know the names in the company, well, you can get away with this. Many people do. Watering hole attack. This is compromising a specific website or service frequented by the target group. Mechanism: infection of the website with malware that subsequently infects visitors. The targets tend to be employees of a specific organization, members of a particular industry, or users of a particular service. Basically, to counter this, you need to keep browsers and plugins up to date, use web filters to block non-malicious websites, that kind of thing. Always keep the security to its highest. An example: an attacker compromises a forum, commonly used by Windows developers, to distribute a zero-day exploit. Next, we have session hijacking. So unauthorized access to a user's web session to impersonate them. Mechanism: stealing session cookies or tokens to gain unauthorized access. The targets are active sessions on web applications, especially those not using HTTPS. The countermeasures: always using HTTPS and logging out of sessions when finished. It's key that you log out of sessions, or those cookies can be used for someone else to get into your system, get into your email, for example. Always use VPNs if you can on untrusted networks. Example: an attacker on the same Wi-Fi network steals a session cookie and gains access to the victim's webmail account. Be vigilant. Rogue software. This is software pretending to be legitimate, but actually designed to harm the system. Often masquerades as antivirus software, asking the user to pay for a full version to remove detected threats. Targets are less tech-savvy users who are tricked into downloading and installing the software. The countermeasures: only downloading software from trusted sources and keeping legitimate antivirus software updated. Example: a pop-up appears warning the user of detected malware and urging them to download a cleaning tool, which is actually rogue software. Next, DNS poisoning. This is tampering with the domain name system to reroute a domain name to a different IP address. This is manipulating DNS data, basically to direct traffic to malicious sites. So the domain name system allows domain names to be linked with IP addresses. Computers do not have domain names. Google's computers, Facebook computers, the bank's computer do not have domain names, they have IP addresses. 298.7.6.5, for example. Domain names are linked to IP addresses on domain name servers. So countermeasures: secure DNS settings using trusted DNS providers that implement DNSSEC, DNS Security Extension, which your ISP should hopefully implement. Example: an attacker manipulates the DNS settings to reroute traffic from a bank's legitimate website to a fraudulent one, capturing login details. Next, port scanning. This is scanning a computer to identify open ports and vulnerabilities. Computers, applications, they connect using ports. Many ports on your computer, many ports on your phone. Specific applications, such as your banking app, use specific numbered ports. Think of them as gateways, connecting your device to some server, a bank, website, whatever. So, utilizing tools to send requests to various ports and analyzing the responses. That's how you do it. There's tools available to just scan ports, see if they're open or not. If they are open, that might be a way into your system. Countermeasures, employing firewalls to block unnecessary ports and using intrusion detection systems. So an example, an attacker uses a tool like Nmap to scan for open ports on a Windows machine, identifying vulnerabilities to exploit and connecting to your system through. Credential stuffing. This is using stolen username password pairs to gain unauthorized access to multiple accounts. So mechanism, automated scripts used to try various service providers with the same login credentials. Targets, users who reuse the same passwords across multiple accounts. Basically, if you use the same passwords for everything, that's bad. Because all the hacker has to do is find out your password for one thing, we can get into everything. For example, they're not going to try and hack into Facebook and get your passwords from that database, but maybe you use the same username and password for your local pizza delivery company or your beautician or something like that. And maybe those passwords are stored on an old machine with poor security in the back room of a building. The hackers hack into that, steal all the usernames and passwords, then try them with everything else. Always have strong passwords, but don't just use one. Don't just use one. So use unique, strong passwords for each service. And when possible, enable multi-factor authentication. Example, following a data breach, an attacker uses a list of usernames and passwords to attempt logging into various services, gaining access to several of them. Then there is shoulder surfing, an act of secretly observing a person's screen, keyboard, or keypad to glean confidential data. Typically requires close physical proximity, but can be facilitated at a distance with telescopic lenses or hidden cameras. Someone in a building across the street with a telescopic lens, viewing the screens within an office, for example, and the keyboards. Targets, ATMs, computer screens at workplaces, and smartphone screens in public. Countermeasures, privacy screens, physical barriers, and heightened situational awareness. Example, a perpetrator standing behind someone at an ATM, pretending to be on the phone, but actually watching as the person enters their PIN. Next, we have phishing, voice phishing. These are social engineering techniques we're talking about now, by the way, rather than just the raw hacking techniques. So definition, the exploitation of telecommunication systems to fraudulently obtain sensitive data. Mechanism, usually involves caller ID spoofing to appear as a legitimate entity. Social security numbers, national insurance numbers, personal banking information, and passwords of the target. To counter this, independent verification of caller identities and skepticism towards unsolicited callers is necessary. Don't trust anyone who calls you randomly if you don't know who they are. Example, a scammer calls pretending to be from the tax authority, claiming you owe back taxes and threatening legal action unless you provide payment details immediately. Never provide them. Phishing, generally, already discussed this, but this is basically the act of sending electronic communications that imitate a trustworthy source to harvest sensitive information, utilizing deceptive URLs, malicious attachments, fraudulent websites to capture data. Email accounts are a common target, online banking services, and social media platforms like Twitter. Or I should say X now, I suppose. Twitter was a better name. Example, a fraudulent email claiming to be from your bank, asking you to confirm your login credentials on a website that is an imitation of the bank's actual site. Then pretexting, the creation of a fabricated scenario to extract sensitive or personal information. The mechanism, the attacker often researches the target to develop a plausible pretext, Targets HR departments, customer service representatives, and occasionally personal acquaintances. Countermeasures, strict protocols for verification and education about the risks of oversharing information. Example, an attacker posing as a surveyor from the HR department, asking for personal details to update company records. Quite a common exploit, especially if they use names that are familiar to you. Baiting, offering something alluring to a target in exchange for data or system access. Mechanism, physical media like a malware-laden USB drive is commonly used. Targets are any individuals who insert the infected media into their system. Countermeasures, limiting the use of external storage media and scanning all such devices for malware. An example, a USB labeled employee salaries left in the office parking lot, tempting someone to plug it into a computer system, thereby unleashing the malware. Tailgating, gaining unauthorized physical access to a building by following an unauthorized person. This exploits social norms and politeness to gain entry. The targets are secure offices, laboratories, and other restricted areas. The countermeasures are implementing no tailgating policies, security badges, and man traps. An example, a person carrying a stack of heavy boxes waits at a secure door and relies on an employee's politeness to hold the door open for them. Very common. Quid pro quo. So providing some form of benefit to the victim in return for information. So a mechanism often poses as IT support, requiring login credentials for system maintenance to improve your system. Targets are employees who are not familiar with security protocols. The countermeasures, educating staff to verify the identity of anyone requesting sensitive information. Example, a scammer calls various numbers within a company claiming to be tech support, running a mandatory system check, asking employees to verify their login details for system updates. Do not fall for that. Okay, that was a very brief overview of various hacking techniques and social engineering techniques. Hope you enjoyed that intro. Once again, if you want to follow me on Twitter, my Twitter handle is @MarkOfTheD. Thank you for now. It's been great listening to you. I look forward to speaking to you all again. Goodbye.